For this assignment, you are going to recreate essentially an interpretation of an app that already exists. So this kind of goes hand in hand with the idea of reverse engineering. So the toothbrush challenge and the reverse engineering challenge are similar in that previous assignments would have had you assume that you were involved with a piece of code from the start to the beginning and that you knew what all of the design considerations would have been. And of course, like we mentioned with the reverse engineering assignment, is you're not going to be the only ones involved with those considerations, right? Here with the toothbrush challenge. Now, what I'm going to let you do is go ahead and read through um, the block of text here because I feel that you can read, so I don't have to do that. But as we can see, the need for pseudocode here is really going to be the defining factor that allows something like a toothbrush and a toothbrush app and the back end for all of these services to really intersect, to really be able to happen. There are very few people who you know go to school or to get trained or have a career that says, look, I am going to be a dental app engineer. That kind of thing just doesn't happen, right? There's probably two people on the planet who woke up one day and said, like, this is what I'm going to do. Really, what we're probably looking at is a bunch of different intersections, right, between a bunch of different career arcs. We're going to have like child psychologists that figure out how we're going to get kids to brush their teeth. We're going to have mechanical engineers that go through and figure out, okay, how do we make a toothbrush that doesn't, obliterate teeth as it's being brushed? We have other mechanical engineers that figure out how do we make the wireless charging work. We have other ones that figure out, how is it that we interact with the battery and an LED to show how much power is left? And that's before we even get to the app. Now the app has to be introduced, and we need yet another set of specialists who can come in here and translate what those child psychologists, what those mechanical engineers, what those electrical engineers, and what the dentists essentially all know. So we do need pseudocode in a very tangible way in order to make something like this work. Now, yeah, and again, please go through and read this. And what essentially everything is going to boil down to is your challenge here is to create an app in pseudocode using selection, repetition, and good user prompting. Remember, this is aimed at kids unless you tell me otherwise. You can give me a note that says, aimed at adults. I wanted to not use the reference designs here as kind of a yardstick, and that'll be okay. Just remember that if you do not tell me that, the default audience here is going to be kids. And remember, we're going to have to design to be audience specific. So this is going to point specifically at sugared up, squirrel-like, itty-bitty kiddos who are learning to brush their teeth and who are very, very distractible. You'll create a text-driven approximation of an app. So you can use either the iOS, that one's up here, or the Android, that would be right here, app as a kind of a reference and as a guide, but you are not recreating the app. You can take a look through the videos there to see what kind of prompting they use, to see what kinds of mechanisms they use to actually, traverse the physical space. So in other words, to actually brush teeth. You've got here creative license for huge aspects of the interaction rather. But really, the physical representation of the brushing actions has to be correct. Your pseudocode, when compiled and run, that's me reading it, needs to be able to actually brush teeth. So You can use what you see in the links, or you can use this video here to see just how wrong you've been doing something as simple as brushing teeth. Now, what I can tell you is if you go through this video, if you go through here, the Android App Store, if you go through here, the App Store, iOS App Store, or here, see what Philips itself says about their app, you will actually see that there is an algorithm, a concrete, sequential, repeatable set of instructions that will get you to a finished product, and that finished product is clean teeth. So take a look at the videos, take a look at the links in through here, and consider these things. Number one, what do you need to do to get the user to interact with your app? Remember, this is going to be text driven, so your displays are going to be what is going to get the user to properly interact with your application. Next, what do you do to get a user to successfully brush their teeth? How do you instruct them? Think about the physical space, so your mouth. Think about the physical aspects, a toothbrush. Think about what you see in that video as to, the length, the duration, everything else about brushing teeth, and use that to control the code, essentially. So control structures needed to maintain the app and the time, that is a hint, it takes to brush. The sequence, the selection, and the repetition are all things that you need to maintain. Remember, go through and actually look at the app videos to see the inspiration from the interface that you can see in the links, but you're not necessarily recreating it. You're just using that as a reference model. So you need to design an algorithm that gets a user rather, to brush a mouthful of teeth successfully. Remember, carefully consider the physical representation of what you're doing and break it into parts that can be repeated, that the structure of your logic is centered around the thing it is that you are aiming to do, the thing it is that you have in your face this whole time that you've been, interacting with, but you haven't seen it as a concrete, sequential, step driven interaction. And that's really what we're looking for. That is what the toothbrush challenge represents.